Hey there, Tim here from Rockout Videography again. We have another DIY project for you today that you may find interesting, especially if you're looking for a more convenient way to practice bass or guitar. It's fairly simple, and it's actually an improvement on a previous design that we did in a previous video. We've been leading up to this with several of our recent gear reviews, so stick around. It's the new DIY bass practice rig episode. The way I practice playing bass has evolved over the years. When I started playing in high school in the 1980s, I used a cheap guitar practice amp and set it next to a radio cassette player while practicing in my bedroom. I didn't have the ability to use headphones to listen to my bass and backing tracks at the same time. I basically used some variation on this theme over the years until I got my hands on a Vox amp plug. A couple of years ago, I made a video about the first version of this practice rig. What I'm trying to do here is have a super convenient setup for practicing bass with headphones that I can just pick up and take anywhere in the house that I may want to practice. I also want it set up and ready to go with as little hassle as possible so I can go from the decision to play to plugged in and playing as quickly as I can. As we've discussed before, using a full-size bass amp with its aux in and headphone out isn't very convenient unless I plan to always sit where I have the amp. Our small Joyo battery-powered bass amp almost gets us there, but doesn't leave an easy way to deal with the tuner, the headphones, and our phone. We also like to use that small Joyo amp for other things. Plugging the headphone amp straight into the bass doesn't allow me to use a tuner pedal, which is okay if I'm on the road and using a clip-on tuner, but I have an issue with misplacing the one that we have right now. This still doesn't give me a place to put down my phone. I can set everything down on a table and even mount it to a simple pedal board, but that still restricts me to having to sit at a desk or table when I practice. The solution is a plate or board to mount everything on that can be attached to a cheap selfie camera tripod stand. Here's what's changed in version 2.0. To get from the bass to the tuner, I usually use this cheap wireless setup from Ing Partner. It's good enough for practice. Since a Behringer tuner pedal runs on 9-volt batteries, it's a pain to deal with when it runs out of juice. I'm using one of these Snail's battery-powered pedal power supplies to run everything that I use in this setup, mainly this cheap Vivlex tuner pedal. Our Vox amp plug was lost and replaced with this inexpensive Joyo headphone amp. Since the amp plug has been found but is now broken, this is the solution for now. Its volume output is low but works fine with the headphones that we have. The wireless transmitter has some Velcro on it so it can sit on top of the board whenever it's not being used and it won't fall off. There's a wood magnetic phone holder that keeps my phone at the right angle to see it and work the touch screen. I keep a 3.5mm aux cable with a USB-C adapter connected to the headphone amp so I can plug my phone into it for backing tracks. The headphones hang from a plastic hook that I found on Amazon. I use Extreme Isolation EX29 headphones, which help with the low volume output of this headphone amp. I'll show you real quick how I made it, but first, if you could help me out by hitting the subscribe and like buttons, we'd really appreciate it. If you like nerdy t-shirts like this guitar pedal shirt, you can buy them at our merch store. Thanks! The design is really simple and uses the same basic materials that I've been using to make DIY pedal boards. It's a piece of 1/4 inch by 3.5 inch board, approximately 12.5 inches long. It's supported on each end by 3/4 inch wide by 1.5 inch tall wood pieces as feet. There are 1/4 inch strips on the side cut for the battery power pack and the headphone hook. On the bottom, there is another 3/4 inch by 1.5 inch piece on its side with a 1/4 inch by 20 female threaded brass insert. I had a lot of trouble getting this installed and should have taken the time to assemble my drill press. It also needed a larger hole than I thought due to the outer threads being so coarse. It just ate up the wood as I attempted to thread it in, and it was really difficult. I eventually got it secured with glue, but it's not completely square to the rest of the board. The phone holder is made from two pieces of 1/4 inch by 1.5 inch joined by another 3/4 inch by 1.5 inch cut at a 45-degree angle. I taped off the areas on both parts that I would be applying Velcro to and applied my current favorite black stain. The plastic headphone hook turned out to be difficult to cut since it was so brittle. It doesn't look perfect, but I sanded it down so it's good enough. I just didn't want it sticking up over the top of the board. I used wood glue to attach the headphone hook and let it sit in a clamp overnight. I also attached 1/8 inch foam rubber strips to the bottoms of the feet. I glued magnets to the phone holder, along with Velcro where the pedals and power supply would go on the board. Although this practice rig can sit on a table if I want to use it that way, I really only use it with the stand. With the stand, I can just pick it up and take it anywhere in the house I want. All I need is a base. One of the kids can grab it if they want to practice quietly. I can even raise the stand if I want to practice standing up. There's enough extra room on the board to mount another large pedal or a couple of small ones. There are plenty of extra power outputs as well. This is good if we decide to use this to practice guitar. The headphone amp actually works for this, as we demonstrated in the gear review that we did about it. I usually keep this thing next to my desk with a bass since this room seems to be where I spend most of my time. Anytime I want to go from, gee, I feel like playing bass right now, to plugged in and tuning up, I can do it in about 44 seconds without trying to go fast. I know this because I stopped while writing this script and timed it. It's also easier for me when I need to learn new songs and practice for gigs, but am not necessarily in the mood to do so. Having the ability to get plugged in and tuned up so quickly helps me to get on track when I'm suffering from a lack of motivation. So, how do you practice bass or guitar? Do you plug into an amp and play in the room through the speaker? If so, do you play along with anything? How do you listen to it? Television, stereo, Bluetooth speaker? If you practice with headphones, what kind of setup do you use to amplify your signal and mix it with other tracks? Does everyone use their phones these days for backing tracks? I would kind of assume at this point they do. I want to take time again to thank everyone who's been supporting the channel by watching, liking, subscribing, and interacting with us in the comments. Until the next video, have a great day.